Hey you there, settling in for a quiet night. Picture this, a soft hum from a fan in the corner, the world outside fading to a whisper. Tonight we're diving into a story that's tender, raw and real, the long often hidden journey of people born with Down syndrome, from ancient firesides where their presence sparked wonder to modern streets where their voices rise. This tale is about how humanity has stumbled, learned and grown. It's not just history, it's a mirror showing us who we are and who we could be. So grab a blanket, dim the lights, and let's wander through time together. Oh, and if you're vibing with this, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you tuning in from and what's the clock saying? I love knowing who's out there sharing this moment. Long before science named it, before anyone scribbled Trisomy 21 in a textbook, there were just people, mothers, fathers, neighbours, watching a child who moved a little slower, smiled a little wider. Imagine a dusty village, maybe 500 years ago, where the air smells of wood smoke and damp earth. A child is born, their face softer eyes, almond-shaped, their giggle a quiet melody. No one knows why they're different, but they're here cradled in the arms of a family who doesn't need a diagnosis to love them. We don't have their stories written in clay or stone, but we have something better, their graves. In France, archaeologists found a child from the 5th century, laid to rest with care, their small bones tucked gently among others in a sacred plot. Not cast out, not shunned, but honoured as if to say, you were one of us. That burial whispers across centuries acceptance wasn't always a stranger. In a world without medical charts, some saw these children as quieter souls, maybe closer to the spirits. You can imagine a mother, her hands rough from grinding grain, carrying her child a little longer, speaking to them in softer tones. Maybe their differences weren't a burden, but a gift, a reminder of life's fragile beauty. In other places, though, the story shifted. Some cultures wove myths around difference, divine blessings, or cosmic warnings. A child with Down syndrome might be revered as touched by the gods or feared as a sign of trouble. It all depended on the stories people told themselves, the flicker of firelight shaping their truths. These ancient traces, burials in Rome, the Andes, even older sites, tell us something profound. People with Down syndrome have always been here, woven into the human tapestry. They weren't a problem to fix or a flaw to erase. They were part of the family, their lives a thread in the endless weave of existence. As you lie there, letting the world slip away, think of those quiet graves, each one saying, I was here. I mattered. And as we drift deeper into history, we'll see how that truth sometimes faded only to shine again, stubborn and bright. Sleep well, and let's keep going. Now let's step into the bustle of the classical world. Think Athens with its marble statues, Rome's crowded forums, or Egypt's sun-baked temples. The air's thick with incense, the chatter of philosophers and the clink of coins. Here difference wasn't just noticed. It was a story, a symbol, a puzzle. For people with Down syndrome born into this swirl of myth and meaning, life wasn't defined by medicine, but by the tales their communities spun. As you settle deeper into your pillow, imagine being there, the world alive with mystery, where every face carried a hint of the divine or the dangerous. In these societies, a child with softer features, slower speech, or a gentler way might spark wonder or unease. No one knew about chromosomes, so they reached for stories instead. In Greece, they might say such a child was touched by a god, maybe Apollo, gifting them a quieter wisdom. In Egypt, myths spoke of children born under strange stars, their lives tied to fate. You can picture a marketplace, the scent of roasted figs and dust in the air, where a child with Down syndrome toddles through their laughter, drawing smiles or wary glances. Some saw them as omens, others as blessings, but rarely just as kids. They were woven into the culture's dreams and fears, their presence a spark for tales of gods or curses. But it wasn't all lofty metaphor. In some villages, families kept these children close to their homes, filled with the clatter of pots and the warmth of shared meals. A father might carve a wooden toy, noticing his child's slower hands but brighter eyes. In others, though, fear won out children hidden away or left to the mercy of superstition. Hindu texts from ancient India spoke of karmic cycles, suggesting every soul had a purpose, but purpose didn't always mean acceptance. The truth is, reactions varied, wildly shaped by the village elder's mood or the priest's latest vision. You can almost hear the whispers. Is this child a gift or a warning? What strikes you as you drift towards sleep is how these people were never invisible. They were part of the human dance, their lives shaping stories, even if those stories weren't always kind. No rights, no protections, just the raw pulse of humanity, sometimes cruel, sometimes tender. As we move forward, that pulse will shift, cloaked in dogma then science, but never quite losing its beat. For now, rest easy, knowing these ancient souls still speak to us, their echoes soft but stubborn. Picture yourself in a medieval village, the air sharp with frost, the scent of wood smoke curling from thatched roofs. It's the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, where the church bell's clang is the loudest thing for miles. In this world, between the 5th and 15th centuries, life is ruled by faith, fear, and the heavy hand of the church. For a child born with Down syndrome, with their gentle eyes and slower steps, this is a time of shadows where difference often carries a weight heavier than stone. As you sink into your bed, let the crackle of a distant fire pull you into their story, one of silence but also stubborn survival. The medieval world didn't have words like genetics or disability. Instead, it had whispers, superstitions that filled the gaps where understanding faltered. A child who spoke late, whose face bore softer, distinct features, might be seen as a sign of divine displeasure. You can imagine the village square muddy and bustling where news of such a birth spreads like wildfire. Was it the mother's sin? They'd murmur their breath fogging in the chilly air. A curse, a test. The church, towering over every thought, often framed these children as evidence of spiritual failing, maybe the devil's mark, maybe God's judgment. Without science to anchor them, people leaned on fear, and fear, as it does, could turn cruel. Many of these children were hidden away, tucked into the dim corners of homes, their laughter muffled behind thick walls. You might picture a mother, her hands chapped from spinning wool, keeping her child indoors away from prying eyes. Some were sent to monasteries where monks or nuns were tasked with caring for the afflicted. Sometimes this meant a quiet life-bread shelter, a place to exist, but too often it meant isolation, far from the warmth of family, their days blending into a grey routine of prayer and silence. The world outside moved on its records, barely noting these lives as if they were ghosts slipping through history's cracks. Yet even in this age of dogma, there's a flicker of something human. Not every heart was hardened. Some families, some monks saw beyond the fear, recognizing a soul as sacred as any other. As you drift towards sleep, think of those unwritten stories, a child's giggle echoing in a cloister, a quiet act of care that no chronicle caught. These lives, though shrouded, endured their presence, a silent challenge to a world not yet ready to see them. The story's not over, it's just beginning to stir. Let's linger in that medieval world a bit longer, where the glow of a hearth casts long shadows, and the night feels endless. Amid the harshness of superstition and rigid beliefs, there are glimmers of kindness like stars breaking through a clouded sky. For people with Down syndrome, often pushed to the edges of society, these moments of compassion were rare but real proof that love could bloom, even in the hardest soil. As you settle deeper, the hum of your fan, blending with the night, lets uncover these quiet acts that history almost forgot. Imagine a small village, the kind where everyone knows the creak of your door. A child with Down syndrome is born their slower movements and bright eyes setting them apart. Instead of whispers or exile, some families chose love over fear. A father, his hands rough from ploughing fields, might sit by the fire teaching his child to stack kindling patient with their fumbled tries. A mother might weave a simple tunic, her stitches tight with care, knowing her child's smile lights up the room more than any candle. These weren't scholars or saints, just parents who saw their child not a symbol and held them close. In monasteries where many such children were sent compassion, sometimes broke through the cold stone walls. Picture a nun, her robes smelling of herbs and dust, guiding a child's hand to knead dough, her voice soft as she hums a hymn. Some monks called these children innocents, believing their gentle nature brought them closer to God. In these sacred spaces they might help tend gardens or carry water, their days woven into the rhythm of prayer and work. Not every monastery was kind, but these exceptions where a child was seen not hidden mattered. They were lifelines in a sea of silence. Art too holds clues to this tenderness. In a few medieval paintings, figures with features resembling Down syndrome appear not as outcasts, but as shepherds, angels, or quiet saints. Were these portraits of real people loved by an artist's eye? We can't know, but they feel like whispers of defiance saying, "You belong." As you drift off, hold on to this even in an age that could be cruel. There were those who chose care, who saw beauty where others saw difference. Their quiet rebellion sowed seeds for a future still unfolding. Now let's step out of the medieval fog and into the sharper light of the 17th and 18th centuries, where Europe's buzzing with new ideas telescopes scanning the stars, quills, scratching theories on parchment. The air smells of ink and ambition, but for people with Down syndrome, this shift from faith to reason brings a new kind of gaze, the clinical stare of science. As you nestle into your blankets, the hum of your fan a steady lull. Imagine a world waking up to observation where difference isn't just a mystery, but something to be named, studied, and too often judged. Before this era, folks with Down syndrome lived in the margins, their lives shaped by whispers of sin or spirit. But now science steps in trading old myths for new labels. Picture a physician's study cluttered with books and glass vials where candlelight flickers over notes. In 1866, a British doctor, John Langdon Down, sits here scribbling a paper that'll change history. Working at the Royal Earlswood Asylum in Surrey, he notices a group of patients with shared traits, almond-shaped eyes, round faces a gentle demeanour. He doesn't know about chromosomes, nobody does yet, but he sees a pattern and calls it Mongolism, a term rooted in the racial biases of his time, comparing their features to outdated ethnic stereotypes. It's a painful misstep by today's standards, but back then it's a spark of recognition. Down's work isn't cruel in intent. Unlike many of his peers, he pushes for kindness, better care, structure, dignity for those he studies. You can almost hear his pen scratching his voice soft as he describes patients who laugh easily, who move with a quiet grace. Yet his paper does something bigger than he could have guessed. It makes people with Down syndrome visible in a new way. No longer just idiots or afflicted, they're a category, a condition to be studied. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it paves the way for research for understanding what we now call trisomy 21. On the other, it reduces people to traits their humanity sometimes lost in the cold language of diagnosis. As you drift towards sleep, think of those patients in Earlswood, their lives now under a microscope. They're no longer invisible, but they're not fully seen either. Not as individuals with dreams or quirks, like how one might love the taste of warm bread or the sound of rain. This scientific dawn is a turning point, but it's just the start of a long road, one that'll twist through darker places before finding light. Rest now, and we'll keep walking this path together. Let's fast forward to the 19th century, where the world's churning with steam engines, crowded cities, and the hum of progress. The air's thick with coal smoke and the clatter of industry, but for people with Down syndrome, this modern age builds new walls, ones made of brick and bureaucracy. Institutions rise like fortresses, promising care but often delivering confinement. As you sink deeper into your pillow, the night wrapping around you, picture these sprawling buildings, their corridors echoing with footsteps, and let's explore a chapter that's both sobering and pivotal. Imagine a small town where a family cradles a child with Down syndrome, their laughter bright but their steps slow. Doctors with their starched collars and serious nods tell parents, your child's better off in a facility specialised care safety structure. It sounds kind, even progressive, and many believe it. These institutions, big grey places with names like asylum or home, pop up across Europe and America, funded by governments eager to organise society's edges. But step inside and the truth isn't so tidy. The halls smell of damp and disinfectant rooms packed with rows of iron beds. Overcrowded, underfunded, they're less about care and more about control. For a child with Down syndrome, life here is rigid. You wake to a bell, wear a scratchy uniform, follow a schedule carved in stone. Some are lumped with others who have wildly different needs, mental illness, physical disabilities, leaving little room for personal growth. You might picture a young girl, her eyes bright, trying to hum a tune, but there's no one to teach her, no space to play. The staff, often untrained, do what they can, but kindness is stretched thin. Families told to trust the system visit less and less, their hearts heavy with guilt. Out of sight, out of mind, and society sighs with relief, thinking the problem is solved. But there are glimmers of light. In some places, a caregiver, a rare soul with a warm laugh, might sneak an extra biscuit to a child, or teach them to fold linens, seeing their smile as reward enough. Friendships form quiet bonds between residents who share giggles or hold hands in the yard. These moments, small as they seem, are lifelines. As you drift off, hold this image, a world that thought it could lock away difference yet couldn't snuff out its spark. This era is a hard one, but it's setting the stage for voices that'll soon rise loud and unbroken. Let's step into the grim shadow of the early 20th century, where the world's buzzing with factories, telegraphs, and a dangerous new idea dressed up as progress. The air's thick with the soot of industry and the arrogance of science gone astray. For people with Down syndrome, this era brings a chilling turn as the eugenics movement sweeps through nations, cloaking cruelty in the name of perfection. As you settle into your bed, the hum of your fan a soft anchor, Imagine a time when humanity's worst instincts hid behind clipboards and cold logic. This is a heavy tale, but it's one we need to hear. Picture a lecture hall packed with men in stiff suits nodding as a professor preaches about improving the human race. Eugenics, born from a warped desire to control nature, labels people with Down syndrome as unfit, their gentle smiles and slower steps deemed a burden. It's not just whispers now, it's policy. Governments from the US to Sweden pass laws allowing forced sterilizations. Imagine a young woman with Down syndrome, maybe 20, her eyes bright with trust, taken to a hospital under the guise of care. Without her consent, without even her understanding, her chance at motherhood is stolen. The paperwork calls it protection for society, but it's a theft of her humanity, as cold as the steel table she lies on. This isn't fringe thinking. It's mainstream, backed by universities, doctors, even charities. You can almost hear the scratch of pens signing orders, the clink of medical tools. In some places like Canada and the UK, thousands with intellectual disabilities face this fate, their futures erased to fit a twisted ideal. Families are told it's for the best, their hearts breaking as they're pressured to comply. The world obsessed with efficiency and progress turns away, pretending these lives don't matter. It's a betrayal wrapped in science where difference becomes a crime. Yet even in this darkness, there's resistance. Picture a nurse, her hands trembling, slipping an extra blanket to a patient defying the system's coldness. Or a parent refusing to sign the papers, their love fiercer than fear. As you drift towards sleep, hold on to these acts of defiance, small as they seem, are sparks in the night. They whisper of a fight to come, a time when these wrongs will be named and challenged. For now rest knowing this story's not done, it's turning toward light. Now let's tread carefully into one of history's darkest corners, where the air feels heavy with betrayal and loss. It's the 1930s and 40s, and Nazi Germany's grip tightens its ideology, twisting science into something monstrous. For people with Down syndrome, this is no longer just exclusion, it's extermination carried out with chilling precision under the T4 program. As you lie there, the world outside fading, let the soft hum of your room carry you into this somber chapter, where humanity's failure cuts deep, but courage still flickers. Imagine a small German town, the streets quiet except for the rumble of trucks. Families receive letters, official and crisp, promising better care for their disabled children at special clinics. A mother, her hands worn from sewing, reads one hope flickering in her chest. She sends her child, maybe a boy with Down syndrome, his smile wide as he waves goodbye. But those clinics aren't sanctuaries, they're traps. The T4 program, named for its Berlin headquarters at Tiergartenstrasse 4, is a machine of death. Children like this boy, with their gentle eyes and slower words, are among the first targeted. Some are starved, others poisoned by gas or injections, their deaths hidden behind lies of pneumonia or heart failure. This isn't chaos, it's bureaucracy stamped and signed. Doctors and nurses, people who swore to heal, become executioners, their clipboards listing lives as unworthy. By 1941, when public outcry forces the program's official end, over 70,000 have been murdered, many with Down syndrome. But the killing lingers in secret, quieter, but no less brutal. Picture a hospital room, sterile and cold, where a child's laughter is silenced forever, their name erased from records. It's a crime not just of war, but of humanity itself, a reminder of how far fear can twist us. Yet even here there's defiance. A nurse slips a warning to a family risking her life. Parents hide their children, their love a quiet rebellion. As you drift off, hold this image, a world that tried to erase these souls, but couldn't snuff out their memory. This horror plants seeds of change, a reckoning that'll grow louder. Sleep now, knowing their lives, though stolen, still echo, demanding we never forget. Let's ease into the mid-20th century, where the world's picking up the pieces after the horrors of war. The air smells of fresh ink from newspapers and the faint buzz of radios crackling with hope. In the wake of Nazi atrocities, including the T4 program's unthinkable crimes, a quiet revolution begins for people with Down syndrome. Parents once told to hide, their children start raising their voices, demanding dignity, and a place for their kids in a world that's learning to value every life. As you sink into your pillow, the hum of your fan a soft lullaby picture. This shift, a spark of love turning into a movement. Imagine a small living room in 1950s America, the scent of coffee lingering, where a group of mothers and fathers huddle around a table. Their children with Down syndrome, maybe a girl with a shy grin, or a boy who loves stacking blocks, aren't cases to them. They're family. These parents are done with silence. They've heard the doctor's cold advice, institutionalise, forget, move on. But their hearts say no. They form groups like the National Association for Retarded Children, later called the ARC Swapping Stories, Fears and Dreams. You can almost hear their voices trembling, but fear saying our kids deserve better. These aren't politicians or celebrities, just everyday folks with stubborn love. They knock on doors, write letters, and push for laws to crack open public schools, which once barred kids with intellectual disabilities. Picture a mother, her hands calloused, from work standing before a school board, her voice steady as she demands a desk for her child. Across the ocean in the UK and Australia, similar groups sprout parents sharing newsletters and hope. The civil rights era fuels their fire, tying their fight to a bigger call for justice. Every life, they argue, deserves a chance not just to exist, but to belong. As you drift towards sleep, think of those early meetings, the clink of coffee cups, the rustle of papers planning a better future. This isn't just advocacy. It's a rebellion of the heart, a refusal to let history's shadows win. These parents and the children they fight for are planting seeds that'll grow into voices too loud to ignore. Rest now, knowing this story's turning its pulse, growing stronger with every step. Now let's roll into the 1960s and 70s, where the world's alive with change protests in the streets, music pulsing through transistor radios, and a new kind of courage breaking through. For people with Down syndrome, this is when the silence starts to crack, as their voices and those of their families begin to echo in classrooms, on screens, and in hearts. As you settle deeper, the night wrapping you like a warm quilt, imagine a world waking up to see these individuals not as shadows, but as people with stories to tell. Picture a schoolyard, the air sharp with autumn leaves and kids' laughter. For the first time, a child with Down syndrome steps onto the playground, their backpack bouncing. In the US, the 1975 Education for All Handicapped Children Act swings open school doors, guaranteeing a public education for kids once locked out. Teachers, some nervous, some curious, find these students bring more than challenges. They bring joy, determination, and a knack for surprising everyone. You can see a girl with Down syndrome, her braids swinging, nailing a line in the school, play her grin lighting up the room. These moments aren't just lessons, they're revelations. Beyond the classroom, the world's starting to look. In 1979, a UK documentary, A World Apart, follows a young woman with Down syndrome, her life raw and real. Viewers may be sipping tea in dim living rooms, see her not as a case, but as a person, funny, stubborn human. Families share their own stories too, in essays and photos showing birthday cakes, scraped knees, and love that doesn't need perfection. And then the real game-changer self-advocates. Young adults with Down syndrome step up, their voices clear at conferences, saying, "We're here. We're different, not less." Imagine a young man, his words deliberate, telling a crowd, "I want to work, to live, to be me." As you drift off, hold this image, a world where people with Down syndrome aren't just seen, but heard, their presence shifting hearts and laws. This isn't the end, it's a beginning, a chorus growing louder. Sleep well, knowing their voices, once whispers, are now a song that won't be silenced. Let's slip into the 1980s and 90s, where the world's pulsing with neon big hair and a new kind of openness. The air's alive with the hum of dial-up modems and the crackle of change. For people with Down syndrome, this is when the spotlight starts to shift, not just to notice them, but to celebrate them. As you sink into your cozy nook, the fans hum, weaving a soft rhythm picture, a world learning to make room where inclusion isn't just a buzzword, but a movement. Grab a mental snapshot of this era, and let's dive in. Oh, and if you're feeling this vibe, hit that like button, drop a comment with where you're chilling and what time it is. Love knowing who's out there with us. Imagine a bustling school cafeteria, the clatter of trays and laughter filling the air. A teenager with Down syndrome sits with friends, maybe joking about a pop quiz or planning the school dance. Thanks to laws like the US's Education for All Handicapped Children. ACT classrooms aren't just open, they're adapting. Teachers once unsure now see these students shine, maybe in art class, where a kid with a wide grin paints a sunset that steals the show. Schools aren't perfect, but they're starting to reflect the real world where everyone's got a seat at the table. It's messy, it's progress, and it's beautiful. Outside the classroom, the world's eyes are opening wider. Picture a TV screen flickering in a living room where a magazine ad or a show like Life Goes On features someone with Down syndrome not as a stereotype, but as a person with dreams, quirks, and a killer sense of humour. Families share their stories in newsletters, their words raw and real, like, "Yeah, parenting's tough, but my kid's laughter is worth it." Medical advances help. 2 heart surgeries and therapies like speech or occupational training mean kids aren't just surviving, They're thriving, living into their 50s and 60s. You can almost hear the cheers at a community job fair, where a young adult with Down syndrome lands a gig bagging groceries, their smile brighter than the store's fluorescent lights. As you drift towards sleep, think of this era as a bridge between silence and celebration, exclusion and belonging. People with Down syndrome aren't just visible. They're starting to shape the world from classrooms to TV screens. Their presence says, "We're not going anywhere. Rest easy, knowing this story's gaining momentum, its heart beating stronger with every step." Now let's fast forward to the early 2000s, where the world's buzzing with flip phones, reality TV, and a new kind of visibility. The air smells of coffee shops and ambition, and for people with Down syndrome, this is when they step into the spotlight not as tokens, but as individuals with stories that demand to be heard. As you nestle deeper, the night soft around you, imagine a world where representation isn't just a gesture, it's a revolution. Let's walk this vibrant path together with the hum of your fan guiding us like a steady heartbeat. Picture a runway in New York, the lights glaring, the crowd hushed. Malene Stewart, a young Australian woman with Down syndrome, strides out her confidence electric. In 2009, she's one of the first models with the condition to go global, her photos shattering fashion's rigid rules. Each step she takes in Paris or London screams beauty's not one size fits all. Or think of Pablo Pineda in Spain, the first European with Down syndrome to earn a university degree. He's not just studying. He's teaching, speaking, showing the world that intellectual depth isn't bound by chromosomes. You can almost hear his voice steady and clear saying, "I'm here and I've got something to add." Then there's the screen TVs and theatres where people with Down syndrome aren't sidekicks anymore. In the US, Lauren Potter lights up Glee. Her role as Becky, not just a cameo, but a fully realised character, funny and fierce. Her advocacy off-screen hits even harder, pushing for inclusion with a smile that could melt steel. Everyday life reflects this shift too. Picture a bakery, the scent of fresh bread wafting, where a young man with Down syndrome greets customers, his apron dusted with flour. Or an apartment where roommates with Down syndrome throw a birthday party balloons, bouncing laughter louder than the music. These aren't exceptions. They're the new normal, a world where presence is power. As you drift off, hold this close representation isn't just about being seen, it's about being known. People with Down syndrome are writing their own chapters now in classrooms, on stages, in everyday moments. Their stories aren't just inspiring, they're proof that humanity's strength lies in its diversity. Sleep well, knowing this revolution's still unfolding, bright and unstoppable. Let's settle into the present, where the world's a mix of smartphones, crowded cities, and a tug-of-war between progress and prejudice. The air hums with Wi-Fi and the chatter of a global village, but for people with Down syndrome, the fight for true inclusion is far from over. It's a time of celebration and contradiction, where victories sit alongside stubborn barriers. As you sink into your bed, the fan's soft whir lulling you. Picture this modern landscape, bright with possibility, yet shadowed by challenges. If you're still with me, drop a comment with where you're at and what time it is. Let's connect across the miles. Imagine a doctor's office, sterile and quiet, where expectant parents sit, hearts pounding, as a screen shows a prenatal test result, a chance of Down syndrome. The doctor's voice is clinical listing, risks, heart defects, developmental delays, but skipping the part about joy, like a child's laugh that lights up a room. In some places, over 90% of these pregnancies end in termination, especially in parts of Europe and Asia. It's not always a free choice. It's shaped by fear, by doctors who forget to mention thriving adults with Down syndrome, or by societies that haven't made space for difference. Picture a parent clutching that ultrasound, left to wrestle with questions alone. Will my child be accepted? Will there be support? The silence around possibility is louder than any diagnosis. Then there's the everyday fight. Schools welcome kids with Down syndrome, but some teachers lower expectations, assuming less where there's so much more. Jobs exist, baristas, office clerks, but too many employers hesitate, their smiles polite but doors closed. Picture a young woman, her resume crisp. Her enthusiasm brighter than the coffee shop's neon sign, yet passed over because it's complicated. Tokenism's another trap. A few shining stars like Malene Stewart make headlines, but thousands live on the margins, their stories untold. You can almost hear the frustration, the quiet plea. See us as normal, not a novelty. As you drift towards sleep, hold this truth: the movement for inclusion pushes on, driven by advocates with Down syndrome themselves, demanding better schools, jobs and respect. It's not about pity, it's about belonging, about building a world where no one's worth is questioned. Rest now knowing this fight's alive, fueled by voices that won't stay quiet, even in the face of a world that's still learning. Now, let's pause at the edge of this journey, looking back across centuries of silent struggle and stubborn hope. The world outside your window might be dark, but here in this moment, the story of people with Down syndrome glows with a quiet power. It's a tale of humanity's highs and lows, from ancient graves to red carpets, proving one truth above all: every life matters. As you settle deeper, the fans hum a gentle guide. Let's reflect on this legacy, woven into the fabric of who we are. If this story's moved, you hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me where are you and what's the clock saying. Let's share this moment. Picture those ancient burials, a child laid to rest with care, their small hands tucked gently by a family who loved them. Fast forward to medieval villages where a monk's kindness or a mother's fierce love defied fear. Then the 20th century with its cold institutions and darker crimes, yet lit by parents who fought and advocates who spoke. Now today, people with Down syndrome aren't just surviving, they're shining. They're actors like Lauren Potter, teachers like Pablo Pineda, neighbours throwing birthday parties with too much cake. Their lives aren't defined by limitation, but by laughter, ambition, and a warmth that can shift a room's entire mood. This isn't a fairy tale. Challenges linger, prenatal fears, closed doors, the sting of being underestimated. But the arc bends toward hope. You can almost hear it, the clatter of a keyboard, as an advocate writes their story, the cheer of a crowd as someone with Down syndrome crosses a finish line. Their presence teaches us something raw. Humanity isn't about perfection or productivity. It's about connection, about the way a smile can cut through noise, about love that doesn't need a reason. They're not here to inspire us, they're here to live fully, fiercely themselves. As you drift off, carry this. The story of people with Down syndrome is our story too. From ancient fires to modern stages, they've been here reminding us that worth isn't earned, it's inherent. They're not side notes, they're chapters, some of the most vivid in our shared book. Sleep well knowing their legacy isn't just history, it's a call to keep building a world where everyone belongs, where every voice matters, and where love in all its stubborn glory always wins. Alright, you're cozy, right? Fan humming, lights dim, maybe a hint of rain tapping your window here in 2025. Let's slip way back before cities or scrolls to a time when humans were just figuring out how to say, "This is me." We're talking jewellery, raw primal, the first spark of human identity. Not gold or glitter, but shells, bones and stones strung together by hands that knew hunger and cold. As you settle in, picture a world lit by firelight, where every bead tells a story. If this vibe's pulling you in, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you at? 5:07 p.m. Sunday, June 22, 2025. Love knowing who's sharing this journey. Imagine a cave in what's now Morocco 100,000 years ago. The air smells of damp earth and smoke, the ground littered with fish bones. A group huddles near a fire, their faces etched by wind and survival. One of them, maybe a woman with calloused fingers, threads tiny nacerious shells onto sinew, each one pierced with care. These aren't just trinkets, they're a leap, a sign of something new. Those 33 beads found by archaeologists scream, "We're more than just alive." They're necklaces, maybe anklets worn to say I belong or I'm strong or even I'm sacred. No mirrors, no selfies, but these shells are their Instagram shouting identity into the void. Back then, jewellery wasn't about vanity, it was survival's sidekick. Picture a hunter, his breath fogging in the dawn, a necklace of wolf teeth clattering against his chest. Each tooth's a story, a killer risk, a triumph. Or a mother her baby strapped to her back, wearing a string of shells traded from some far-off shore, a nod to her kin or her gods. In burial sites across Europe and Africa, skeletons lie with beads around wrists, necks, ankles carefully placed like a map to the afterlife. Even nomads, lugging just what they could carry, made time to carve polished paint. You can almost hear the scrape of stone on bone, the quiet focus of crafting something that matters. As you drift towards sleep, think of those first beads glinting in the firelight, proof that humans have always craved meaning. From caves to catwalks, jewellery's been our silent language, identity, belief, beauty. These prehistoric souls with their rough hands and fierce hearts started it all. Rest now, knowing their spark still shines and we'll keep chasing it through time. Let's glide into the cradle of civilization where rivers carve life into deserts and humans start dreaming big. It's Mesopotamia and Egypt thousands of years ago, where jewellery isn't just adornment, it's power, prayer and a piece of the divine. The air's thick with dust and incense, the clink of hammers shaping gold. As you sink deeper into your pillow, the fans hum. A steady pulse picture these ancient artisans, their hands weaving stories into metal and stone. You with me on this Sunday evening, June 22nd, 2025. Drop a comment with your spot and time. Let's make this a global fireside chat. In Mesopotamia, think Sumer, Akkad, Babylon, the Tigris and Euphrates breathe life into mud brick cities. Here, gold's not just shiny, it's a language of kings and gods. Picture a priestess, her headdress heavy with carnelian and lapis lazuli glinting in a temple's torchlight. Each bead's a prayer, each spiral a nod to eternal life. Women of status wear bracelets, pendants, their graves stuffed with jewels to carry wealth into the afterlife. You can almost smell the cedar oil, hear the rustle of her robes as she moves her jewellery saying, "I'm chosen by gods and men." Even statues of deities get blinged out their gold eyes, staring into eternity, a reminder that power sparkles. Now swing over to Egypt, where the Nile's a lifeline and gold's the flesh of the gods. Imagine a pharaoh, his broad collar gleaming with turquoise and garnet, each gem picked for its magic. The scarab beetle carved into amulets promises rebirth. The anchor looped like a cross whispers life forever. You can see a child, maybe royal, clutching a protective charm, its eye of Horus warding off evil. Even the dead get decked out. Mummies wrapped in headdresses toe caps their journey to the afterlife paved with bling. Artisans, their fingers nimble, work under flickering lamps, knowing each piece isn't just worn, it's sacred, a spell against chaos. As you drift off, hold this close. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, jewellery was more than status. It was a bridge to the divine, a story etched in gold. These ancient souls with their glittering dreams wove meaning into every bead, a legacy that still catches the light. Sleep well, knowing we're just starting to unravel this shimmering thread through history. Let's sail to the sun-drenched shores of the Mediterranean, where ancient Greece and Rome hum with marble myth and ambition. The air's sharp with olive oil and sea salt, the clatter of sandals on stone paths. Here, jewellery isn't just decoration. It's a declaration of who you are, what you believe, and sometimes who you'll fight for. As you nestle into your cosy spot, the fans hum, weaving a gentle spell this Sunday evening, June 22nd, 2025 at 5:10 p.m. Picture artisans hammering gold under starlit skies. Loving this vibe? Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you and what's the clock saying? Let's make this a global campfire. In Greece, beauty's a philosophy and jewellery's its poetry. Imagine a woman in Athens, her hair pinned with a gold wreath shaped like olive leaves, sacred to Athena. It's not just pretty, it's balance, enhancing her natural grace without stealing the show. Earrings dangle with tiny owls, their repoussé work glinting in the agora's bustle. You can almost hear the marketplace chatter, smell roasted figs as she moves her bracelets, etched with scenes of Aphrodite rising from the sea. Gems like carnelian believed to soothe anger, or amethyst guarding against a wild nightad meaning. Intaglios engraved stones double as seals pressed into wax to sign a deal, tying beauty to power. Now Rome, where opulence rules. Picture a senator's wife, her neck draped in pearls from the Persian Gulf, emeralds from Egypt sparkling on her fingers. Her fibular brooch pinning her stola is a riot of sapphires from Sri Lanka shouting wealth louder than words. Men aren't left out. Think a soldier's signet ring carved with his family crest, or an emperor slipping on a charm of Hercules hidden under his toga for luck. Even kids wear bulle lockets stuffed with amulets to fend off evil spirits. You can see a freed slave, now a citizen, flashing a gold ring, his pride louder than the Colosseum's roar. Jewellery's a biography here, telling tales of conquest, faith, or freedom. As you drift towards sleep, hold this. In Greece and Rome, every bead, every gem was a story, love, loyalty, or a prayer against fate. These ancient souls with their glittering lives made jewellery a language we still speak. Rest easy knowing this thread still weaving, sparkling through time. Now let's journey east to India and beyond, where jewellery's not just worn, it's a sacred song, a prayer etched in gold and jade. The air's heavy with jasmine and spice, the jingle of anklets on dusty paths. From ancient Indus Valley cities to China's silk-draped courts, adornment here is a language of the soul tying body to spirit. As you sink deeper into your pillow, the fans hum a soft mantra at 5:10 p.m. June 22nd, 2025. Picture artisans crafting under flickering lamps. Digging this? Like, subscribe and comment. Where are you vibing from tonight? In India, jewellery's scripture. Imagine a woman in 2500 BCE, her wrist clinking with carnelian bangles, a nose ring glinting in the sun. Gold tied to Lakshmi, goddess of prosperity, isn't just wealth, it's divine armour. You can see her at a wedding, her forehead shimmering with a mangtika believed to wake her sixth chakra. Anklets sing with each step, bangles hum harmony, and toe rings whisper marital vows. Men shine too, kings with gem-studded turbans, warriors with talismans blessed for battle. Picture a market, the air thick with curry and chatter, where a bride's dowry glitters, not just as riches, but as her worth, her shield. Every piece from mere jhumkas to necklaces tells of love, fertility, or gods. Swing to China and Southeast Asia, where jade's the star, cool eternal, a slice of immortality. Imagine a scholar, his pendant carved with a lotus believed to guard his spirit. Dragons curl on nobles' belts, phoenixes dangle from women's hairpins, each stone a prayer for harmony. You can almost hear the clink of jade beads in a temple smell incense curling skyward. From birth to burial, jade's there guiding souls to the next world. Across the East, jewellery is not just bling, it's a vow, a shield, a poem worn close to the heart. As you drift off, hold this in India, and the East jewellery was life itself, sacred, storied, eternal. These artisans, with their deft hands and dreaming hearts, wove a legacy that still sings. Sleep well, knowing this glittering path stretches on its light unbroken. Let's wander from the medieval mists into the dazzle of today, where jewellery evolves from holy relics to personal stories sparkling on every wrist. Picture Europe's candlelit abbeys fading into the glow of Renaissance workshops, then the flash of modern cities. The air shifts from incense to the buzz of electric tools, and adornment becomes a dance of faith, art, and identity. As you cozy up at 5:11 p.m, Sunday, June 27th, 2025, the fans hum a soft guide. Let's trace this glittering arc, loving this hit that, like button, subscribe and comment where are you and what's the time. Let's make this a global vibe. In medieval Europe, jewellery is a prayer. Imagine a knight, his armour clanking, a cross pendant tucked against his chest, its relic a saint's bone whispering protection. Kings wear sapphire crowns, their blue a nod to divine wisdom. Queens pin ruby brooches bold as passion. You can hear the clink of rosary beads, pearls strung tight, each one a plea to heaven. Even peasants knot cords with bone charms, their faith humble but fierce. But then the Renaissance hits like a sunrise. Picture a Florentine goldsmith, his hands steady, crafting a cameo for a merchant's wife, its carved face a nod to ancient Rome. Gems bloom in symmetrical splendour, enamels glow like stained glass jewellery's now art shouting, sophistication louder than any sermon. Fast forward to the 19th century, where Victoria's England turns jewellery sentimental. Imagine a widow, her black dress rustling a locket of her husband's hair pinned close. Engagement rings catch on diamonds, winking promises. Mass production lets a shop girl afford a tin brooch her own slice of shine. By the 20th century, it's a free-for-all Art Deco's sharp lines, disco's gold chains, punk's safety pins screaming rebellion. Today, jewellery's whatever you make it. Lab-grown diamonds, pride pins, or a bead from your grand's attic. Picture a street market, the air ripe with coffee and chatter, where a teen picks a zodiac pendant claiming their story. It's not just bling, it's you worn loud. As you drift off, hold this from medieval crosses to Instagram trending charms. Jewellery's been our mirror, faith, love, defiance. These makers, from monks to TikTok artisans, tied us to something bigger. Sleep well, knowing this story's still sparkling, as alive as the pulse under your skin. Now let's dive into a different kind of story, one that hums with mystery and whispers of the ancient world. Picture the shimmering coast of southern Italy near modern Naples, where the sea laps at ruins older than memory. This is Baiae, once Rome's playground of pleasure, now half sunk, its secrets guarded by waves and steam. As you settle in at 5:11 p.m, Sunday, June 27th, 2025, the fans hum, a soothing tide. Imagine a place where emperors partied and myths took root. Digging this vibe? Like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you chilling and what's the clock saying? Let's explore this sunken world together. Baiae wasn't just a city. It was a fever dream of luxury built on the restless Campi Flegrae, a volcanic caldera where the earth breathes sulphur and hisses heat. Picture marble villas clinging to cliffs, their mosaics glinting under a relentless sun. The air's thick with wine roses and that metallic tang of hot springs. Emperors like Nero and Caesar had pads here, their parties' legendary think togas. Slipping poets reciting deals struck in steamy bathhouses. You can almost hear the laughter, the clink of goblets as Rome's elite escaped the capital's grind. Seneca called it a vortex of vice, but for those invited it was paradise. Yet Baiae's beauty was its curse. The same volcanic magic that warmed its baths shifted the ground beneath it. Over centuries the sea crept in, swallowing temples, gardens, and grand promenades. Today divers swim past marble columns, fish darting through sunken courtyards, the city frozen like a ghost under glass. But one spot stands out, a chamber carved into volcanic rock, half drowned, steaming with legend. They call it the Oracle Tomb, and some say it's no tomb at all, but a gateway to the underworld itself, where the veil between life and death thins to a whisper. As you drift towards sleep, hold this image: Baiae's glittering ruins, half lost to the sea, hiding a chamber that still feels alive. This isn't just history, it's a riddle, a place where myth might still breathe. Rest now knowing we're about to dive deeper, where the stones themselves seem to speak. Let's linger in Baiae, where the sea cradles Rome's lost playground, and the earth hums with secrets. It's the 1960s now, the air sharp with salt and the buzz of discovery, as a quiet man unearths a chamber that whispers of myth. This is the Oracle Tomb, a place where history and mystery collide. As you settle in at 5:14 p.m. Sunday, June 26, 2025, your fans hum a gentle wave. Picture this moment, a tunnel into the past lit by curiosity. Loving this? Like, subscribe and comment. Where are you at and what's the time? Let's dig into this tale together. Picture Robert Paget, not some Indiana Jones, but a British civil engineer with a knack for the ancient. No fame, no fanfare, just a guy with a hunch and a trowel. In the mid-60s, he and his mate Keith Jones, plus a scrappy team of volunteers, start poking around Baiae's ruins near the old Roman baths. The ground's a mess, volcanic soil, tangled roots, but ancient texts and geological maps nudge them on. They find a narrow passage, stone-lined, snaking into the hillside. At first it's just another Roman relic, maybe an aqueduct. But as they crawl deeper, the air shifts cooler, heavier, with a whiff of sulphur that stings the nose. This isn't just a tunnel, it's a stage. The passage twists, the light fades, and benches carved into the rock hint at rituals, people pausing, maybe praying as they descended. You can almost hear their boots scuffing, their breaths quickening. The deeper they go, the weirder it gets. Sudden drops, steamy humidity, and a final chamber half flooded with black water steam curling like ghosts. Paget's pulse must have raced. This wasn't a tomb for bones, but a portal. Maybe the antrum of legend tied to the Crimean Sibyl Apollo's priestess. It matches Virgil's tales in the Aeneid, a dark path to the underworld, fumes and all. The stones feel alive, like they've been waiting. As you drift off, hold this Paget's find, scoffed at by stuffy academics, was a crack in time, a glimpse into Rome's wild heart. The Oracle Tomb isn't just a ruin, it's a question daring us to wonder what truths lie buried. Sleep well, knowing we're about to chase those whispers deeper. Now let's step into the haze of Roman myth, where gods and shadows dance and a single voice could shake an empire. We're in Baiae's orbit near Lake Avernus, a volcanic crater the Romans swore was the gate to Hades. Here lives the Cumaean Sibyl Apollo's priestess, her prophecies as potent as the fumes she breathed. As you sink into your pillow at 5:14 p.m. June 22nd, 2025, the fans hum, a mystic chant picture. This woman, her words echoing through time. Vibe with this? Like, subscribe, and tell me where are you and what's the clock saying. Let's unravel this legend. Imagine the Sibyl, not some fairy tale oracle, but a flesh and blood seer, her cave near Baiae's steaming cliffs. The air's thick with sulphur birds dropping dead over Avernus's cursed waters. She's old legend says Apollo gave her 1,000 years, but forgot eternal youth, so she's withered, her voice a rasp from the earth's depths. You can see her eyes wild, swaying in a trance, volcanic vapours twisting her mind. Her prophecies aren't neat, they're cryptic, terrifying, like riddles carved in smoke. Generals knelt before her poets, like Virgil immortalised her, and pilgrims feared her cave where the veil between worlds felt tissue thin. In the Aeneid, Virgil paints her guiding Aeneas into Hades, down a passage hot with fumes shadows pressing close. Picture it a tunnel like Baiai's oracle tomb, its darkness swallowing light, the drip of unseen water loud as a heartbeat. The Sibyl's voice bounces off stone, half human, half divine, promising truths no one's ready for. Was she real? Maybe a priestess? Maybe a myth spun from Baiai's eerie geology? But Romans didn't split hairs. Myth was reality. Her cave, whether Baiai's or nearby Cumes, was no metaphor. It was a door to the dead where you might hear your fate or lose your nerve. As you drift towards sleep, hold this: the Sibyl's story tied to Baiai's strange stones blurs history and dream. She's not just a figure, she's Rome's pulse. It's fear and awe of what lies beyond. Rest now, knowing this myth still breathes its echo waiting in the tomb's dark heart. Let's plunge deeper into Baiai's oracle tomb, where the earth itself seems to whisper secrets. It's a place carved not just from volcanic rock, but from the Roman mind, designed to pull you from the sunlit world into something darker, stranger. The air's heavy with sulphur and mystery, and every step feels like a ritual. As you settle in at 5:15 p.m, Sunday, June 27th, 2025, your fans hum a steady guide. Picture this tunnel, its stones alive with intent. Digging this vibe? Like, subscribe and drop a comment. Where are you chilling and what's the time? Let's walk this ancient path together. Imagine standing at the tomb's entrance, the sea's salty breath mixing with Baiai's volcanic heat. The passage starts wide, light filtering in, but then it twists sharp, deliberate, cutting you off from the world above. You can feel the walls closing in the air, warming the ground slick with condensation. Benches carved into the rock invite a pause, maybe for prayer, maybe to steel your nerves. This isn't just a tunnel, it's a journey engineered to unsettle. Halfway down, a vertical shaft pumps sulphuric fumes, the earth's own breath stinging your eyes and fogging your mind. You can almost hear the hiss like the gods themselves are exhaling. Then comes the plunge, a narrow staircase dropping to a final chamber half flooded with inky water. Picture torchlight dancing on the ceiling, steam curling from the pool like spirits rising. It's quiet, too quiet, the kind of hush that makes your heart beat loud. Some say this pool mirrors the Styx, the mythic river between life and death. The chamber's no accident. It's a stage built to blur reality and myth. Maybe a priestess hid in an alcove, her voice echoing prophecies, or maybe the fumes alone spun visions. Either way you leave, change the weight of the underworld clinging to you like damp wool. As you drift off, hold this: the oracle tomb's genius isn't its stone, it's the way it reshapes your soul. Let's linger in Baiai's strange glow where Rome's decadence and dread intertwine. The oracle tomb isn't just a ruin, it's a window into a world where myth and reality weren't separate, where a cave could be a god's doorstep. The air hums with the tang of sulphur and the weight of ancient belief. As you sink into your pillow at 5:15 p.m. June 27th, 2025, the fans hum a quiet pulse picture. Romans trembling before this place, their lives shaped by its mystery. Loving this, like, subscribe and tell me where are you and what's the clock saying. Let's unravel this ancient mindset. Picture Baiai in its prime, a glittering escape for Rome's elite. Villas sprawl along cliffs, their mosaics catching the sun while thermal baths bubble with volcanic heat. This is the Campi Flegrae, the burning fields where the ground shifts and steams, and Romans saw the divine in every crack. The oracle tomb tucked near these baths wasn't built for show, it was sacred, maybe forbidden. To Romans, the underworld wasn't a story. It was real, a realm of shades reachable through places like this. You can imagine a senator, his toga crisp, stepping into the tunnel, heart pounding, seeking answers from the Cumean Sibyl or the spirits beyond. The tomb's purpose is murky, maybe a cult's ritual space, maybe a theatre for prophecy. Think of pilgrims, their sandals scuffing stone, descending to face their fears or futures. Virgil's Aeneid describes a similar cave near Lake Avernus, where Aeneas met the Sibyl, her words carried by fumes. The tomb's design, its bends, its heat, its watery end matches that tale too closely to dismiss. Was it built to mimic myth, or did it birth the stories? Either way, it was a machine of awe, turning doubt into dread, questions into visions. As you drift off, hold this: the oracle tomb wasn't just stone, it was Rome's soul, a place where faith and fear met, leaving echoes we still hear. Let's stand one last time at Baiai's edge, where the sea whispers over sunken marble, and the oracle tomb hums with unanswered questions. This isn't just a ruin, It's a riddle carved in stone, a place where Rome's dreams and fears still linger. The air's salty, tinged with sulphur, and the mystery's as thick as the steam. As you cozy up at 5:17 p.m, Sunday, June 22nd, 2025, your fans hum, a soft echo of the tide. Picture this site, quiet but alive. Digging this? Like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you at and what's the time? Let's close this chapter with wonder. Picture the tomb today, its entrance modest, tucked into a hillside, ignored by tourists chasing Pompeii's flashier ruins. Divers glide past Baiai's underwater villas, but few venture here where the tunnel waits damp and still. Those who do feel it a tightening in the chest, a hush that wraps the senses. The stones worn by time hold their secrets tight, but they speak if you listen. Robert Paget's 1960s find, once mocked by scholars, now draws fresh eyes. With radar and 3D maps, researchers see the tomb's precision, its curves, its heat, its pool, not as chance but as genius. A space built to shift souls, whether through fumes or faith. What makes this place unforgettable isn't just its engineering, it's the why. Was it a cult's hideout, a stage for the Cumean Sibyl's trance, or Rome's attempt to touch the divine picture a pilgrim, 2,000 years ago emerging from that dark chamber eyes, wide changed by something they couldn't name? The tomb's legacy isn't answers, it's questions eternal, as the waves lapping Baiai's ruins. It reminds us Romans feared what lay beneath building shrines to tame it, yet craved its truths. As you drift off, hold this: the oracle tomb's not just history, it's a mirror reflecting our own ache for meaning, our dance with the unknown. Sleep well, knowing its whisper endures, waiting for those who dare to hear. Now let's shift gears to a modern legend, a story of grit and grace that starts in the heart of struggle. We're in Columbus, Ohio, 1997, where a girl named Simone Biles enters a world that's anything but easy. Her spark, though, is unstoppable, lighting a path from chaos to glory. As you settle in at 5:17 p.m, Sunday, June 27th, 2025, the fans hum a steady beat. Picture a kid whose flips would one day flip the world. Loving this tale? Like, subscribe and comment. Where are you and what's the clock saying? Let's tumble into Simone's story. Imagine a small apartment, the air heavy with uncertainty, where Simone's born to a mom battling addiction. Life's rough foster care bounces her and her siblings through unfamiliar beds, their days a blur of change. You can see a tiny Simone, barely 3, her eyes bright, despite the weight clutching her sister's hand. But love steps in. Her grandparents Ron and Nellie Biles take her in, adopting her and her sister Adria in Houston, Texas. Picture their home, warm with the smell of Nellie's cooking, where Simone finds safety structure and a laugh that fills rooms. To her, Ron and Nellie aren't just guardians, they're mom and dad, her rock. Then one day a daycare trip changes everything. Picture a gym, the air sharp with chalk dust, where 6-year-old Simone watches gymnasts flip and soar. Her body can't stay still. She mimics them on the sidelines, her cartwheels wild but fierce. A coach spotting that raw fire hands her a note: get this kid in classes. From that moment, gymnastics isn't just play, it's purpose. You can see her small but mighty bounding onto mats, her grin brighter than the gym's lights. Her power's explosive, her balance uncanny, and her joy, it's pure rocket fuel. As you drift off, hold this: Simone Biles, born into storm, found her spark in a gym, flipping pain into possibility. Sleep well, knowing this kid's just getting started. Let's stick with Simone Biles, zooming into the early 2000s in Houston, Texas, where a kid's raw spark ignites into something fierce. The air's thick with gym chalk and the thump of mats, a world where sweat and dreams collide. Simone's not just flipping for fun anymore, she's carving a path to greatness, one tumble at a time. As you settle in at 5:18 p.m, Sunday, June 22nd, 2025, your fans hum a steady rhythm. Picture this tiny dynamo, her grin lighting up the grind. Digging this? Like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Where are you at and what's the vibe tonight? Let's dive into her rise. Imagine Bannon's gymnastics, a buzzing hive of flips and falls where young Simone barely 8 bounds in her ponytail bouncing. She's small, just 4'8" in her teens, but her power's huge, like a firecracker in sneakers. Coaches spot it: fast, explosive strength, a balance that defies gravity, and that rare air awareness, knowing exactly where her body is mid-twist. You can see her muscles taut, launching off a vault, spinning so fast it's a blur. but it's not just talent, it's grit. Simone trains hard. Her hands calloused her knees, creaking like a bag of marbles after hours of drills. She loves it though, her laugh echoing when she nails a move. Enter Amy Borman, her coach and anchor. Picture Amy calm but firm,